I stopped supporting my brother's family after he said, "No place for losers." That's why I wasn't invited to Christmas. Now he's losing it. In fact, I was excited for Christmas this year. I wasn't rushing to finish everything at the last minute. For once, I had purchased gifts for my parents, my brother Jacob, his wife Kelly, and their children before the first week of December. I even purchased extra presents in case there were any unannounced visitors. I have no idea why, but I had the impression that this year would be successful. I was really taken aback when my mom opened the door and said, "We don't want you here this year," as I was standing on my parents' front porch, holding a bag of wrapped gifts in each hand. At first, I assumed it was a strange joke. I began to chuckle, but Jacob's voice interrupted her from behind. His words, "This is no place for losers. You're really starting to wear on all of us." I simply stood there and gazed at her. My dad was in the background, staring nervously, everywhere except at me. Without saying a word, despite her uneasy appearance, my mother didn't react. Jacob was utterly arrogant. I had a flurry of feelings, including humiliation, rage, and perplexity. However, I managed to remain composed. "Fine, if that's how you feel," I said, nodding. And then I made my way back to my car. Something inside of me changed as I sat in the driveway and gazed at the bags of gifts in the passenger seat. No place for losers. Tired of me? Where did this originate? I suspected Jacob was responsible, but I was unable to determine why. Over the years, I had shown him and his family nothing but generosity. I had paid for his children's summer camp tuition, school supplies, and even his mortgage when he needed it most. And now, suddenly, I wasn't invited to Christmas. I made the decision not to go just yet, to gain some answers. I was heading back to the door. I returned after leaving the gifts in the car. As though they hadn't anticipated my return. My parents were still standing there, chatting in low voices. Jacob was pretending nothing had happened as he sat on the couch and browsed through his phone. I chose not to knock. "What's going on?" I said as I entered. "Why am I not welcome at Christmas? What did I do?" Without raising his eyes from his phone, Jacob smiled. "You really don't get it, do you? You've been slacking off lately. The kids have barely gotten anything from you this year." Stunned, I gazed at him. "What are you talking about? I've spent hundreds on presents for your kids. They have more presents in the car than anyone else. Last year you did more? This year, it's like you don't care. It's embarrassing for us, honestly," Jacob said, turning to face me at last. I looked to my parents, thinking they would say something, perhaps defend me or warn Jacob that he was acting inappropriately. Rather than that, my mother smiled awkwardly and remarked, "But you just bought a new car. You found money for it." I wasn't even sure how to react. For a moment I said, "The car is on credit," maintaining a steady tone. "And even if it wasn't, how does buying a car suddenly make me responsible for Jacob's kids? They're not my responsibility." Jacob leaned back on the couch and declared, "You're the one who makes the most money." As though everything had been explained. "We're a family. Families help each other. You've always done that." His wife Kelly was sitting calmly in the corner. When I glanced at her, her face was hot, and she was looking down at her hands, without saying anything. It was as though she wished to vanish. I questioned, "Is that your reasoning? Because I've been generous in the past. I'm now obligated to do so forever? And if I don't, I'm a loser?" Jacob gave a shrug. "If the shoe fits." For me, that was it. I shook my head and stepped back. I turned to face my parents and said, "You know what? You're right. I don't belong here." Turning to Jacob, I said, "Enjoy your Christmas and good luck with those presents, because this loser is done financing your life." Without waiting for a response, I left. I gripped the wheel more tightly than I had to and drove silently home. I was unable to comprehend. Was I the villain in this situation? For years, I had gone above and beyond for my family, always helping Jacob when he needed it, and ensuring that his children never suffered because of his financial difficulties. And now, I was a loser for not doing enough. In addition to being unwelcome at Christmas, I spent some time sitting in the driveway after I arrived home, staring at nothing. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the bag of gifts that was still in the van. I had spent weeks choosing the ideal items, considering what my parents would value and what the children would enjoy. And for what? I wasn't supposed to be here. It became more apparent to me as I gave it more thought. This went beyond Christmas and gifts. I had been too blind. Or perhaps too willing to notice that this had been developing for years. The fact was that Jacob had always relied on me. He and Kelly had a difficult financial beginning to their marriage. He struggled to maintain a consistent job, and Kelly's part-time job hardly provided for their basic needs. With the assumption that it would only be for a short time, a few hundred here, a few hundred there, I volunteered to help once when they were in danger of being evicted. I assisted with the rent. Later, when their second child was born, I helped with childcare. A little while became years. However, Jacob always called me first when he was having a bad day. To be honest, I always said yes because I cared for his kids, not because I had to. I didn't want to see my brother and his family suffer, and I didn't want them to be without. In retrospect, I saw that I had produced this dynamic. Jacob relied on me too easily. Because of me. It became entitlement somewhere along the line and ceased to be thankfulness. The final straw was being excluded from my own family's Christmas celebration tonight because I didn't do enough. I decided I was done. When I woke up the following morning with more clarity. Don't help Jacob any longer. No more incessant presents to compensate for his inefficiency. He could decide for himself if he wanted his children to have the items I had given them. Making the choice wasn't simple. Not only would I lose my brother's financial support, but I would also jeopardize my connection with him, his kids, and possibly even my parents. However, I couldn't continue to be treated more like an ATM than a brother and son. They didn't contact me. And I didn't contact anyone. Perhaps they received the message. I thought, however, I should have known Jacob wouldn't take it so lightly. New Year's Eve was spent in complete silence. No texts. No phone calls, nothing. My parents, Jacob, and even Kelly didn't get back to me. I was all alone over the holidays for the first time in years. Although I didn't anticipate them contacting me. It was an odd sensation when midnight passed, and my phone was still silent. I'll admit that I considered phoning, but every time I did, I thought of Jacob's sneer in his statement. No place for losers. I had been the one keeping things together for years, and they had the gall to treat me as though I were disposable. Number 1. I would give them distance if that was what they desired. I started to notice a change. By the middle of January, Kelly, who had always been a reserved individual and shied away from confrontation, unexpectedly texted me one evening. It was succinct and direct. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I don't agree with what happened. Jacob won't hear it from me, but I thought you should know. Unsure of how to react, I sat for a while looking at my phone. The fact that someone in the family recognized things for what they were was comforting on the one hand. However, Kelly's apology suddenly seemed like too little too late because she had not spoken that evening. At last I responded. I appreciate it, Kelly, but this isn't something I can just move on from. I didn't mind that she didn't continue the topic. The surprise visit then, in early February, Jacob unexpectedly arrived at my residence. When I heard the knock on the door, I was in the middle of a work meeting. I initially disregarded it as I wasn't expecting anyone. However, the knocking continued. Jacob was there. When I eventually opened the door, he looked more unkempt and irritated than I had ever seen him before. Before I could stop him, he remarked, "We need to talk," and went inside. I folded my arms. What's this about? He was direct and concise. You need to stop acting like this and start helping out again. I laughed because I couldn't believe he meant it. Not because I thought it was amusing. Helping out? You mean pay for your life? I told you, I'm done with that. He gave me a scowl. You're the one with the money. Do you know how hard it's been for us since you decided to act like this? The kids barely have what they need. Kelly's trying to keep it together, but we can't do it without your help. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Are you listening to yourself right now? You're a grown man, Jacob. You have a wife and children. If you need more money, go out and earn it. It's not my job to solve your problems. He retorted. You've always helped before. Why are you being so selfish now? Selfish? I said again. You want to talk about being selfish? Let's talk about how you lied to our parents about me, turned them against me, and then banned me from Christmas because I didn't spend enough on your kids. And now you're here asking for more? You've got some nerve. Jacob tried to interrupt him by raising a hand before he could say anything further. We're done here. I'm not giving you another dime. And I don't want to hear from you again until you figure out how to act like an adult. He glared at me as he stood there for a while before hurriedly leaving. I assumed that would be the last of it for a while. Once Jacob stormed out, he would grumble to my parents, but he would soon realize that I wouldn't give up. I was mistaken. I received a call from an unfamiliar number 2 days later. I wouldn't have answered normally, but I felt compelled to do so. Hello? A man's voice said. Is this Michael? Yeah, who's this? This is Mark Dawson. I'm a lawyer. I represent a client who has recently expressed concern about certain financial matters involving your family. Do you have a moment to discuss them? I went cold. An attorney? What are the financial issues? In an unduly courteous tone, he stated. I can't go into detail over the phone. But it involves financial contributions you've made to your brother Jacob and his family, specifically your use of those contributions. Would you be willing to come to my office for a discussion? I was at a loss for words. There were a lot of options in my head, but none of them were good. Had Jacob borrowed money under my name? Was he up to no good with my information? Or was this a last-ditch effort to scare me into handing him money once more? Who's your client? I inquired at last. There was a moment's silence. I'm afraid I can't disclose that right now. But I assure you this is not a lawsuit against you. It's more of an investigation. I consented to a meeting against my better judgment. My curiosity overcame me. And I couldn't get rid of the impression that this was more than just Jacob being himself. The following day, I had no idea what to anticipate as I entered Mark Dawson's office. But he dropped a bombshell. As soon as I sat down, he pushed a packet across the desk toward me and stated, Kelly is the client I'm representing. I was so surprised that I blinked. Kelly? Why would she need a lawyer? Mark studied me intently while folding his hands. She thinks Jacob's been using the money you've given him over the years inappropriately. She has reason to believe he's been hiding money from her and from you. I felt sick to my stomach. Hiding money? What do you mean? Copies of bank statements, receipts, and what appeared to be screenshots of text messages were visible when he opened the folder. She suspects that Jacob has been taking your financial contributions and funneling them into a separate account. Based on what she found, he may have been using the money for gambling and other personal expenses instead of supporting his family. I gazed incredulously at the paperwork. You're saying all those times I helped him with bills, with his kids' school stuff, that money never went to them? Mark gave a serious nod. It seems that way. Kelly discovered this recently, and came to me because she didn't know what to do. She didn't want to involve you at first, but given the circumstances, she thought you should know. What I was hearing was unbelievable. All along, Jacob had been deceiving me by spending money I believed would benefit his family on unspecified expenses. For not recognizing it sooner. I wasn't sure if I should feel deceived, angry, or just foolish. My voice was strained as I questioned. Does Kelly have proof? Take a look for yourself. Mark nodded and moved the folder closer to me. The proof. I looked over the papers. There were withdrawals from Jacob's account, significant amounts moving to a different account in his name, and transfers from my account to his, which corresponded with the times I had assisted him with emergencies. I observed transactions from that account, including visits to pricey dining establishments, internet gambling sites, and even a few hotel stays. Unbelievable. I shook my head and mumbled. And Kelly knew about this? She only recently discovered the second account. Mark clarified. She had suspicions for a while, but she didn't have access to his banking information until she stumbled across some bank statements he'd left out. She didn't have proof. That's when she contacted me. I tried to absorb everything as I sat back. Does she want me to do anything? Press charges or something? Mark gave a headshake. Not at this point. She's more focused on protecting herself and the children, but she thought you should know in case Jacob tries to manipulate you further. I laughed resentfully. Well, he already tried. He showed up at my house a few days ago demanding that I start helping again. Mark looked at me irritably. That goes along with what Kelly told me. It seems Jacob is feeling the pressure now that your financial support has stopped. He may be in even deeper trouble than Kelly knows. As I gazed at the folder, my thoughts were racing. A part of me wanted to go to Jacob's house and confront him, but I also knew that would only make him feel good because he had irritated me. I said, "What's Kelly up to instead?" Mark paused before responding. She's considering her options. She wants to make sure she and the kids are safe, financially and otherwise. If Jacob's behavior escalates, she may file for separation or take other legal action. I was more affected by hearing this than I had anticipated. Kelly had always given off the impression of being a gentle, devoted person who would always be there for Jacob. I could tell how horrible things had gone if even she was eager to leave. With a mix of feelings, angry at Jacob, sad for Kelly and the children, and guilty for not seeing sooner how far this had gone, I thanked Mark for his time and walked out of the office. Above all, though, I experienced an odd sense of relaxation. This was the first time in years that I wasn't bearing Jacob's burden, and now that I was aware of the reality, I would never again allow him to control me. The request. I couldn't stop thinking about all I had just discovered. After leaving the lawyer's office, the gaming, the hidden money, and Kelly slyly plotting her next move, I was in the center of my family's drama, which was similar to a soap opera. I stayed away for the next few days. I didn't give my parents a call, and I didn't get in touch with Jacob either. However, it seems that he didn't like the quiet, because one evening, as I was ready to have supper, his name appeared on my phone. I thought about leaving it on voicemail, but I felt compelled to answer it. "What do you want?" "Jacob." He wasted no time at all. He said, "We need to talk," in a strained, almost desperate voice. "You said something to Kelly, didn't you?" I arched an eyebrow. "What are you talking about?" "Don't act foolish," he yelled. "She's been acting weird since Christmas, and now she's bringing up lawyers and separation. I know you've been putting ideas in her head." I couldn't contain my laughter. "You think I'm the problem? You're the one who lied to her, hid money, and gambled it away. If she's tired of your crap, that's on you, not me." After a pause, Jacob eventually spoke the words. "You don't know what you're talking about," I responded. "Oh, I think I do." As my rage boiled up, Kelly told me everything: the secret account, the gambling, the money you've been wasting while I've been breaking my back trying to help you. "You're a joke, Jacob." I interrupted him before he could finish his shout, saying, "Here's the thing." I interrupted him before he could respond. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but it felt good to finally say what I'd been holding in for years. "You've used me for the last time. I'm done helping you. I'm done covering for you. If Kelly leaves you, that's on you. And if you try to drag me into this mess again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been up to. The backlash was quick, and Kelly called me the following day. Has Jacob given you a call? With caution, she asked. Yes, I replied. He wasn't content? Has something taken place? I confronted him about the gambling and the hidden account, she said. After hesitating, he acknowledged some of it. But he is still making an effort to downplay it. Are you all right? I inquired. Despite not hearing it, she answered. I'm fine. But she was sick of defending him. The children are worthy of better. I knew things were terrible between them, but hearing her say that felt like the beginning of the end, and it impacted me harder than I thought it would. Whatever you decide to do, you have my support, I replied. Thank you, she said softly. And I apologize for everything. The way we treated you over Christmas wasn't fair. I ought to have spoken up sooner. We spoke for a while, and when we hung up, I felt a weird sense of closure. Although Jacob had ruined our relationship, Kelly and the children weren't my enemies. And I wouldn't be angry with her if she had the courage to confront him. Nevertheless, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that Jacob wasn't finished causing trouble. Kelly sent me a brief text message a few weeks later, consisting of only 3 words. We're going today. She told me she was moving to another state with the kids while Jacob was out of town on a business trip, which I figured was just another excuse for gambling. And that she had packed up their belongings, rented a moving van, and left without telling him, at least not until she had everything sorted out legally. I called her right away. I just couldn't stay any longer, she stated gently. I can't keep pretending this is normal. What about everything, even the rent? Sincerely interested in how she was doing, I inquired. I was hoping you could help me with that, just for a little while, she said after a pause. As much as I hate to ask. Say no more, I said. I'll take care of it. So yes. I did end up helping her and the kids, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally doing the right thing and not being used. When Jacob returned home to find the house deserted, he naturally went completely mad and called me to vent about how I had ruined his life and turned Kelly against him. After letting him vent for a while, I said, perhaps this wouldn't have occurred if you had spent more time as a husband and father and less time gaming. I hung up after saying, but hey, good luck with that. The children are adjusting to their new school. Kelly has secured a stable career, and she is at last beginning to feel in charge of her life again. I've heard that Jacob continues to blame everyone but himself, but in all honesty, it's no longer my problem. Then, if you can call it that, you have your happy ending. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My brother had an affair with my fiancée. Got her pregnant before my wedding, and my parents supported him over me. This will be a lengthy one, and it's as disorganized as it sounds. Though there is much to explore here. I will attempt to keep it as succinct as feasible. Whether someone believes this or not doesn't matter, it's just so ridiculous that I have to voice this. I won't sugarcoat anything either. But I will steer clear of any information that would allow someone unfamiliar with the circumstances to identify myself. Up until a few months ago, I was engaged to my 5-year girlfriend. We will call her Sarah. I'm a 32-year-old guy. Let's call my younger brother Mike. He is 29, and has always been the perfect child in our family. I have to provide some background on my family, and how we came to this place if I truly want to grasp the depth of this betrayal, and why it struck me so deeply. Mike could not do anything wrong in our parents' view growing up, whereas I was continuously chastised for the most minor transgressions. This was clear and severe. Not simply ordinary sibling rivalry or minor partiality. Mike broke something and I would be accused. I would be the one grounded while he started a fight. He would get a new video game console. If we both received straight A's, I would get a pat on the back and be advised to keep it up. Our parents, Tom and Linda, always found a justification for their actions. Mike's younger brother requires more attention, given you are the older one. You ought to know better. We have to be careful with Mike, he is just more sensitive. I felt unworthy and unwanted in my own house from the never-ending assault of double standards and gaslighting. The preference just grew as we aged. When I enrolled on a partial scholarship in a decent college, my parents hardly noticed. But they threw Mike a big celebration and purchased him a car to drive when he decided to enroll in community college. Not mind that for years I had been riding 5 miles each way to my part-time work. I left right away to get away from the poisonous surroundings at home. I worked 2 jobs, paid debt, and negotiated college. Mike left a semester later, saying he didn't belong in college. Our parents entirely agreed with his choice, complimenting him for knowing himself and for not fitting social norms. Over the next 5 years, they even funded his string of failing companies. My family always found a way to drag me back in, even with the space I tried to create between us. Holiday dinners were a torture of subdued jabs and not quite subtle comparisons. Oh? Are you still working at that entry-level job? Well, Mike is considering launching another company. He is quite entrepreneurial. Not that I was really laying a solid career. While Mike was devouring our folks' retirement money, I tried to keep a friendship with Mike despite all, though it was always one-sided. He remained my brother, after all. I would try to connect, reach out, and he would either ignore me or find some way to make the discussion into a competition he might win. Should I get promoted, he would suddenly have a great opportunity right ahead. If I began dating someone, he would also magically be in a committed relationship. I met Sarah in one of my attempts to get back in touch with Mike. We clicked right away, as she was friends with one of his brief relationships. Smart, humorous, compassionate, and extremely beautiful, Sarah was everything I had ever wanted in a companion. We began dating. And for the first time in my life, I felt really cherished and joyful. My parents were inevitably less than delighted. They questioned what Sarah saw in me and made disparaging remarks about how she was out of my level. Mike, on the other hand, started abruptly to show great interest in my life. Wanting to know everything about Sarah, he would ask about her nonstop. I was simply glad he seemed to be interested in something from my life. At the time, looking back, I ought to have spotted the warning signs. After 1 year of dating, Sarah and I moved in together, and things were fantastic. We both drove, had decent jobs, and discussed the future. I began to feel as though perhaps, just maybe, I could have the great profession, loving partner, maybe even children someday, that I had always wanted. On our 4th anniversary, I asked Sarah. It was simply a peaceful supper at home, and a moving speech, nothing spectacular. She answered yes, and I thought I was on top of things. We agreed to engage in a protracted process and slow down wedding preparation. We had our whole life ahead of us, or so I believed. We were not in a hurry, to put it mildly. The responses were mixed when we told my family we were engaged, saying, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but. My mother slapped on a fake grunt. My dad murmured, "Good luck with that," then turned back to watch the TV. Mike, though, had the most unusual response. He praised us, but his smile seemed almost predatory and wrong. I dismissed it then, attributing it to my own fears, work stress, and wedding plans. Occupied with the next year, working long hours at our jobs, Sarah and I were saving money for the wedding and a down payment on a house. Though we saw less of each other than we used to, I reasoned it was only a phase. Every marriage experiences difficult times. Looking back, I ought to have seen the warning signals. Sarah grew more aloof, constantly on her phone, grinning at texts from someone she would rapidly claim to be merely an acquaintance from work. She began leaving more with her pals, arriving late home, smelling of cologne and wine. I did, however, entirely trust her. I never even gave her any thought regarding possible cheating, let alone with my own brother. Sarah started acting somewhat strangely over 4 months ago. She was temperamental, restless, and often sick. Thrilled with the possibility, I considered perhaps she might be pregnant. We had not been trying, but we discussed wanting children at last. Imagining nursery colors and baby names, I began to arrange how I would help her. She dropped the bomb one evening after sitting down with tears in her eyes. Though not mine, she was pregnant. I looked shocked. Our hectic schedules had caused us not to be close in a while, but I never anticipated she would cheat on me. She broke down totally and mumbled, "It's Mike." When I inquired who the father was, my whole universe collapsed in that instant. Everything I knew, everything I had built my life around, came toppling. I found it difficult to breathe. I had no ideas. I could only feel this intense loss and treachery. Sarah tried to clarify her words. They came out in a hurry between sobbing. Apparently, it began during our engagement party. Mike had cornered her and informed her she was making a mistake in marriage, playing on her insecurities. He reassured her she could do better, and he could give her everything I couldn't. They had been having an affair for months, so it was not just a one-time occurrence. That evening I said, "Send Sarah out." I couldn't stand to look at her or be in the same room as the lady who had so totally betrayed me. She begged me to pardon her, said it was a mistake, said she loved me. But all I could think of was how many times she had lied to my face. She had been with my brother, how many times wearing the ring I had given her. I phoned Mike after Sarah went. Not even now can I recall what I said. All of it was a haze of hurt and wrath. At first, he attempted to seem cool, saying it was only a drunken error and that it had no bearing on anything. He became hostile and responded, "Well, maybe if you'd have been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me." When I pressed him, I observed ready to do anything that would cause him regretting what he said. I got in my car and headed to his flat, though I'm not sure what I intended to do. Our parents were already there when I arrived. Mike apparently initially phoned them, crafting some narrative about how Sarah had seduced him and how terrible he felt. And you also know what? They came to believe him, always they do. While my dad nearly stood there with his arms crossed, looking disappointed in me, of course, not in his dear Mike. My mom started lecturing me about forgiveness and family right away. They wouldn't listen when I tried to describe exactly what happened. They insisted that since family comes first, I should forgive Mike and help Sarah through the pregnancy. I forgot years of pent-up wrath and bitterness spilled forth. I told them just what I thought of their distorted sense of devotion, how they had always favored Mike at my cost. How they never once stood on my side or helped me. Mike was dead to me, I informed him. He was no longer my brother since they no longer had me. I advised my parents they could have the son they had always desired, ignoring their calls and pleas. I bolted without a goal in mind. I drove for hours, just desiring to get away from everything and everyone. When I got home, I had hundreds of missed calls and messages, some from Sarah begging for another opportunity. Some from Mike alternately between apologies and accusations, but most were from my parents demanding that I grow up. In a tone I seldom ate, hardly slept, ignored them all. Using all of my accumulated vacation time, I called out of business, avoided everybody, and found it intolerable to have to explain what had happened, trying to find where I'd gone wrong. I simply sat in my apartment, going back over every minute of my relationship with Sarah and every contact with Mike. 3 months have gone by now to handle all this turmoil. I changed my number, relocated to a new apartment, and began treatment. Still, my family won't let go. Even with my best attempts to cut touch, they find ways to meddle in my life, starting to show up at my place of employment. They are trying to ambush me and drive a reconciliation, crying about how I'm separating the family. My mother corners me in the parking lot. Gruff voicemails from my dad on how I should man up and pardon Mike. Mike has personally tried to approach me on a few occasions, but thus far, I have been able to dodge him to guilt trip me into forgiving Mike. They have even dispatched flying monkeys, that is, extended family members suddenly blowing my phone. Aunts, uncles, cousins I haven't spoken to in years are reminding me how important family is and how I should let bygones be. They seem to be living in some other world where what Mike and Sarah did was only a minor error rather than a life-altering one. The most recent growth is yesterday. Sarah sent me a note. She intends to co-parent with Mike and is keeping the baby. And now, guess what? About becoming grandparents. My parents are over the moon and totally overlook the circumstances of how it happened and the nasty comments my mother and father made when Sarah was with me. Apologies and explanations abound in the letter, which discussed how Mike and she had discovered true love in trying circumstances. She even dared to add she hoped the child will benefit from us all being friends someday. I am at the very end of it. Part of me wants to simply sever ties entirely and start over somewhere else. Perhaps go to another state, change my name, create a new life free from knowledge of this mess. Another side of me, though, is so enraged that I want to stay and fight so they may realize how screwed up things are. Overall, not sure what to do going forward. Every sphere of my life has suffered from betrayal. Alone with my thoughts makes me uncomfortable. I never gave dating any thought either. I get terrified thinking of depending on someone like that. Folks who believe I should choose the high road and reconcile with my family as if I am the one in the wrong for not wanting to play happy families with the folks who most wounded me have lost friends over this too. The idea of Sarah and Mike having a kid together, a child that ought to have been mine, is like a continual knife in my stomach. Logically, the youngster is innocent in all this. The baby's parents are lying, cheating scumbags. It is not the baby's fault, but I cannot feel anything nice about its existence. My parents have begun discussing my obligation to participate in the lives of the child and my role as an uncle. I get sick physically at the idea. How am I expected to approach this child without spotting the final emblem of my brother's treachery? Reddit, I suppose my question is, am I the exploitive for not forgiving my brother and ex-fiancé? Is it bad of me to wish to terminate relations with my family over this? Any guidance on how to move forward would be much valued. Since right now I feel as though gaslighting and treachery are drowning me in the sea. I understand this was lengthy. If you have read thus far, thank you. In a sense, just writing all this out has been relieving. I'm not sure what I should anticipate from publishing this, maybe validation, guidance. Or maybe just the opportunity to yell into the void and have someone, anybody, hear me. Edit. Holy mess, this exploded overnight. I appreciate all of your support and counsel. The response overwhelms me, and it will take some time to look over all the comments. Nonetheless, I wanted to answer some typical queries. 1. Certainly. I have discussed a restraining order against my family with a lawyer. It is under work. 2. No, I am not intending to interact with the baby. Although the child is not at fault, I cannot be engaged without losing my sanity. 3. For anyone curious about my employment, I have previously discussed the matter with HR. They are sympathetic and aware. They have given me the opportunity to work from home more regularly and raised front desk security levels. I appreciate their awareness. 4. Many of you have inquired whether I have given any thought to migrating to another city or state. I am very definitely considering this. There are offices of my company in various other cities. Hence, a relocation could be feasible. I am balancing the advantages and disadvantages. 5. To those advocating DNA testing, Sarah came clean about the affair and the chronology fits. I have no cause to think the child isn't Mike's. Even if, by some miracle, it turned out to be mine, I'm not sure I could ever look at that child without considering this. 6. The volume of persons relating such tales has overwhelmed me. Knowing how frequent this kind of treachery is breaks my heart, but it also curiously consorts me since I'm not alone. I appreciate everyone's vulnerability in sharing. 7. To the person asking whether I had thought about suing Mike for alienation of affection, I investigated it, but sadly my state does not accept it. Though right now, I'm not sure I have the stamina for a legal fight. 8. Several have noted that Mike's actions seem egotistical. Many of the articles I have begun reading about narcissistic personality disorder speak to me. Though not justification, some of his behavior helps me to comprehend. 9. For anyone wondering about Sarah's family, they are as startled and repulsed as one would anticipate. They have cut off communication with her and contacted me to give their support. Though little consolation, I value it. 10. To the person wondering whether I considered having children of my own someday, to be honest, this whole experience has made me doubt whether I want a family at all. I'm trying, though, not to make any major decisions while I'm still digesting things. Though I'll let you know if anything noteworthy occurs. Right now, I'm concentrating on recovery and forward movement. Once more, thanks to Reddit more than you would realize. You have contributed. Your guidance and encouragement has really been a lifeline amid trying circumstances and have given me much to consider. Though I can't answer every remark. Kindly know I'm reading them all, and they help me feel less isolated in this. Update 1. Hey Reddit, it's been a total roller coaster 2 weeks since my last post. First of all, I want to thank everyone for the great advice and support. Reading over all your responses has been both sad and yet consoling. I never anticipated my post to explode like that. The frequency of this sort of treachery is disorganizing, to put it mildly. The last several weeks have been demanding. Recall my remark of working on a restraining order? That descended into a complete ordeal. Though we had a hearing booked after my attorney turned in the paperwork, given the facts and ongoing harassment, I felt it would be simple. I corrected myself with their own attorney, an elegant man in an expensive suit, most likely charging more per hour than I earn in a week. My parents turned up for the hearing, claiming I was separating the family over a basic misunderstanding, as if Mike had stumbled and fallen into my fiancée. They painted me as the unstable one. Luckily, the judge was not purchasing it. She issued the restraining order against Mike and my parents, but not without my mother crying in the courtroom and my father gazing at me like I had just committed murder. Mike's expression, though. I swear, if looks could kill, I would be 6 feet under. Mike tried to get to me as we were exiting the courtroom, reminding his attorney of the recently imposed restraining order. She stood between us. Mike merely scoffed and stated that I couldn't hide behind a piece of paper permanently. This is not over. If I said his remarks didn't knock me a bit, I would be lying. For now, at least, I have some legal protection. Another dream has been the office scenario. Recall how I mentioned my family had started showing up at my workplace? That reached a head last week. Though my assistant buzzed in, reporting my mother was in the lobby and creating a scene while I was in a meeting with a client. She apparently brought a photo album and was trying to show my colleagues infant images of Mike and me as she sobbed over how her boys used to be so close. I left the conference and descended to the lobby where I discovered my mother surrounded by a bunch of awkward-looking colleagues. She was midway in recounting how Mike and I used to bathe each other when young children. She rushed toward me when she saw me, chatting about a baby shower, but I stopped her. She should leave right away, I told her, or I would call the cops and have her taken off for trespassing against the restraining order. Her expression resembled what I would have slapped her with. But after everything they have gone through, I couldn't muster myself to care. Security let her out, and I had to spend the next hour damage managing with my employer and colleagues. Fortunately, most of them were understanding, but I could see others were wondering what kind of drama I was bringing into the workplace. Still, the incident with Mike was where it truly veers off course. I was at the gym last Saturday, working out some of my resentment on the punching bag. I was so intent on my exercise that I didn't see someone approaching me until I heard his voice. As I whirled around, Mike was grinning at me like he hadn't just broken the restraining order. He began to run his lips loud enough for others close to hear. He chuckled when I urged him to go before I phoned the police, claiming he would tell them how I had been threatening Sarah and him. I became lost at that point. My fist hooked with his jaw as I struck at him. He stammered back, then launched himself at me, except this time no one told me to be the larger person and let Mike win. We ended up on the floor, trading punches like we were kids again, without parents to break us up, before the gym personnel drew us apart. I made a few decent hits. I could feel my eye bulging closed while Mike's nose was bleeding. We were both screaming, seeking release and aiming at one another once more. It was only when the gym manager threatened to call the police that I snapped out of it. I got ready and headed off, still pulsing with excitement. I answered a call from an unidentified number as I was headed home. Against better taste, I responded to it. Sarah shouting at me about how I had cracked Mike's nose might require surgery. I laughed. It was not against will. Her anger at me following all they had done seemed ridiculous. Too much. I apologized to her for hurting her little boyfriend, the one she had been sleeping with behind my back for months. She began to cry, then continuing on about her stress, how the baby could sense her misery, and how selfish I could be. I blocked the number and hung up on hers. The fight produced quite a strong blowback. News had crept across our social circle like wildfire. Texts from friends and relatives, some supporting me and others calling me names for beating my poor defenseless brother, were exploding on my phone. Reaching out once more, Sarah's parents expressed their dismay in their daughter and reiterated their support of me, though at this point, I'll take anything I can get. It was a meager comfort. Nowadays, the restraining order seems inadequate. Mike has proved he is ready to break it, hence I'm concerned about his future actions. The legal fallout has been a horror show. My attorney called me the day following the gym incident. Mike apparently had accused me of assault. I described what had happened, how Mike had provoked me, how he had broken the restraining order. We would fight it. My lawyer groaned, but given that I delivered the first punch, it might be an uphill struggle. We are already pressing our own charges against Mike for breaching the restraining order, though nothing is definite. My attorney feels sure this will strengthen our case. I had to show the cops the marks on my face and knuckles and make statements to them. Having to defend myself against my own brother makes one embarrassed. Mike and I have been banned from the gym, although I can't say I blame them. It sucks that gym was one of the only places I felt I could properly release some of my wrath. I have always been close to my cousin Amy, so she contacted me the other day. The family has been complaining a lot about her supporting me, but she is not wavering. She shared with me some of what goes on behind the scenes. My parents apparently have been telling everyone I'm experiencing some sort of mental collapse. They claim I'm just jealous and can't let go since Sarah and Mike's relationship began shortly following our breakup. While some family members are buying it, Amy notes that many others are not. Knowing that they are out there propagating lies about me while I'm trying to keep my head down and heal irritates me. Things at work have been, to put it mildly, strained. I can sense my colleagues are walking on eggshells around me following the incident with my mother in the lobby and the fight with Mike that is trending on local social media. Early this week, my manager summoned me into his office. He began by stating he valued me as an employee and that I'm going through a trying period, but then he really hit me. He believes it would be best if I took a break, just till things calm down. If you would want, he continued, we can call it a personal sabbatical, paid of course. I wanted to disagree, telling him that right now only work keeps me sane, but I could see the choice had already been taken. I agreed, thanked him for his patience, and got to work packing my office. 2 of my colleagues were gossiping about how my brother had got my fiancée pregnant as I was leaving. I departed, slamming my office door louder than required, rather pleased to see them jump. Saying all of this isn't hurting me would be dishonesty. To get out of my apartment, I have started late-night lengthy rides. Sometimes I find myself wondering how the hell my life turned into such a mess when parked outside my previous apartment, the one I lived with Sarah, amid all of this turmoil. I discovered help from an unlikely source, Sarah's younger sister, Emma. Emma contacted me on social media, apologizing for her sister's behavior and lending her support. I was first dubious. What if this were some sort of trick? But after chatting with her, I found she shares my hatred of Sarah's actions. She has been sharing with me details on Sarah and Mike's life. Apparently, they have moved in together and act as though they did not simply blow up many lives to be together. Emma says Sarah has been trying to present herself as the victim in all this, sobbing to anybody who will listen about how she never meant to hurt anyone, and in what ways she and Mike are soulmates who found each other against all odds. I get ill to my stomach from it. But I appreciate Emma keeping me current. After all, information is power, even if it is knowledge I would prefer not to have. Another horror has been the social media scenario. When it comes to social media, I have always been a really quiet person, but this whole incident has put me in an unwelcome public view. On a local Facebook group, someone, probably one of Mike's buddies, posted about our gym brawl. The post omitted our names, but it sufficiently detailed the circumstances to allow anyone who knows us to work it out. The section on comments became a battlefield. Some people were supporting me, claiming Mike received his just compensation. Others called me erratic and advised I should be locked up. One night, after a few too many beers, I made the grave error of looking over some of the comments. I ended up hard enough tossing my phone across the room to break the screen. Since then, I have turned off most of my social media accounts. The continuous alerts and the messages from folks I haven't spoken to in years, suddenly wanting all the juicy specifics of my personal life, make me unable to handle it. Having all that has transpired, I have come to see I cannot continue to live in this city. Too many memories abound. Too many opportunities for running across either Mike or Sarah or my parents. I've been researching moves inside my organization. Our Seattle office has a seemingly interesting opening, though I've never loved continuous rain. At this point, I would relocate to the moon if it would mean escaping all this drama, though I have not yet made any decisions. The concept of a fresh start is growing more and more intriguing. New city, new apartment, new life, somewhere nobody remembers me as the man whose brother knocked down his fiancée. Since the restraining order was obtained, my parents have been unusually silent. I'm waiting for the other shoe to fall so they may find some fresh approach to try to push their way back into my life. Sarah has been distributing the word of her pregnancy all around. Emma tells me she has been sharing regular updates on social media, ultrasound images, belly shots, the works. Always with a caption regarding how grateful she and Mike are, how thrilled they are to start their family. Every additional bit of data feels like a fresh wound opening. The hurt just waiting to resurface when I start to heal. Right now, then, is where things stand. I felt 2 weeks ago that my life could not become any more disorganized, but strangely it has. I still hurt and am angry, but I also am exhausted, tired of justifying myself. Thus, Reddit, I suppose this is more of an update than a change of direction. Not sure, a cry into the emptiness. Right now, I'm not even clear about what I'm asking for: advice, affordability, time machine. I could go back and never introduce Sarah to my brother. I'll attempt to keep you all informed. Whatever occurs going forward, more to me than you could realize is the result of your support. It's encouraging to be reminded that even if it seems as though lies and treachery rule my entire life, there are still decent individuals out there. Final update. Hey Reddit, I'm back with what I expect to be my last post on this entire fiasco after not updating for a week. First of all, I want to thank each of you for your help and guidance along this process. During the worst of my life, your comments have been a lifeline. Where, therefore, ought one to start? In just 7 days, a lot has transpired. I am still working to sort it all. I suppose I would begin with the most important news: I'm relocating. Indeed, that's correct. I jumped in and agreed to a transfer to our Seattle headquarters, though it was not a simple choice. I felt I needed a fresh start following all that had gone down. The choice followed last week's really difficult day. I had just returned from another meeting with my attorney regarding Mike's assault allegations when I came upon a note in my mailbox from Sarah. It was curiosity that won me over, even though I nearly threw it away without opening it. Inside was a handwritten note discussing her and Mike's great excitement about their baby and an ultrasonic image. She continued on regarding how the baby would love to have its uncle in its life and how I could find it in my heart to be pleased for them. Red caught my eye. I had grabbed my phone, unblocked Sarah, and phoned her before I knew what I was doing. She picked up the second ring, and I let loose. I informed her exactly what I considered her, Mike, and their contented small family to be. If she believed I would ever want anything to do with that child, I told her she was insane. As far as I could tell, Mike, the baby, and she could all go to hell. Though it wasn't my best moment. It seemed like I'd at last uttered all the things I had been holding back. I realized then I had to leave this city. That same evening, I phoned my supervisor and said I wanted to move to Seattle. To be really honest, he seemed relieved. He was probably concerned about how this drama would damage the business. He guaranteed to expedite the documentation, and by the next morning, it was official. 2 weeks allowed me to pack my life and go across the nation. My family and social circles soon started to buzz with word of my relocation. Normally, my parents were rather angry. Once more breaking the restraining order, they showed up at my flat unannounced, trying to talk me out of it, saying I was deserting the family. My mother was crying, red-faced and furious with my selfish and immature behavior. My dad was ranting. I stayed quiet. I just phoned the cops and had them taken off for breaching the restraining order. My mother yelled that I would regret this, that family was everything and I was throwing it all away. As they were being let out, I just closed the door and resumed packing. Mike responded in a different way. Presumably because of ongoing legal concerns, he did not try to personally reach out to me. Instead, he posted a long piece on social media about how some people struggle to see others happy and how he and Sarah were overcoming hate to concentrate on their new family. Clearly meant for me. It sought to present himself as the victim. Though I'll confess it stung to see how many people liked and commented in support of him. I told myself that their viewpoint doesn't count, as they don't know the reality. Among the most unexpected responses was Sarah's. Following our phone talk, she contacted her sister, Emma, who, you should recall, had been keeping me informed on Sarah and Mike's developments. My statements apparently struck closer than I had anticipated. Emma informed me Sarah had broken down, confessing she was afraid of the future and felt what she and Mike had done was terrible. Bless her. My cousin Amy said she could help me pack. She even informed me further about the family situation. Amy informed me that my aunt, the sister of my mother, had a major blowout with her mother, calling her out for consistently favoring Mike and driving me away. It grew really heated, with my aunt remarking that with their years of favoritism, my mom and dad were reaping what they had created, that someone is at last calling them out on their behavior. It makes me somewhat happy. Although the legal matter is still under flux, my attorney tells me that my relocation has no bearing on anything. Mike broke the restraining order, hence we are still charging him fees. And we are contesting the assault accusations he leveled against me. Given Mike's track record of breaking the restraining order, my attorney feels sure the judge would see through his lies. Moving across the nation should also help prove that I am not a threat to Mike, thereby helping to have his charges dropped. After this, I'm not sure whether I will publish any more updates. Starting anew means bidding farewell to the past, and as beneficial as this community has been, I believe it's time for me to distance myself from rewriting this narrative. I have to concentrate on starting my new life instead of mucking the old one. This thus seems to be my last update. Hope for me, Reddit, in Seattle. I have a completely fresh life ready for me and want to maximize it. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, Please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.